Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Keyshawn Davis, he came out recently and he said something that kind of surprised me. He called out one of the most dangerous contenders in the lightweight division, and that is Frank Martin. It surprised me that Keyshawn would call out someone like Frank Martin because of that situation with Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson. When I heard Keyshawn saying that his boy Shakur was going to beat up Devin Haney, as opposed to him saying that that's the fight he really, really wants in the future, regardless if it's 2 years from now. Just like when Floyd Mayweather was calling out De La Hoya for 5 years. Floyd was 5 divisions smaller than Oscar De La Hoya. And while people thought that Floyd Mayweather was just clout chasing or dreaming that he would ever get a De La Hoya fight one day, he ended up getting it. And beating Oscar De La Hoya made Floyd Mayweather the new face of boxing, and to this day, the most successful ever inside of the ring and financially the most successful boxer. So when I heard Keyshawn Davis saying to Devin what Shakur is going to do to him, I didn't really know how to take that. I didn't know what that really meant when it came to what Keyshawn Davis was about personally. I mean, we really didn't know who he had on his hit list. We knew for sure he wanted to see his boy Shakur fight Devin Haney. But usually when you hear someone come out and say, my boy Shakur Stevenson, he's going to beat you, he's going to do this to Devin Haney, he's going to do that, that usually comes from maybe one of Shakur Stevenson's close friends that don't box, or one of his relatives that don't box, right? But they are the most loyal supporters to Shakur Stevenson. But because Keyshawn Davis boxes, not only does he box, but he's around Devin Haney's weight class, I would have expected him to call out Devin Haney, even if it's 2 years from now. I would have expected him to say, you know, Devin Haney is on my hit list in the next 2 years. That's one of the main guys that I want to fight. Remember, guys, Floyd Mayweather was calling out Oscar De La Hoya years and years and years before they fought. He was like 5 weight classes or something like that below Oscar De La Hoya. And no one paid attention to it because they thought it was crazy that Floyd Mayweather was constantly calling out Oscar De La Hoya. And Floyd made that fight come to fruition. He beat Oscar De La Hoya, and that made Floyd Mayweather the face of boxing. Since Canelo Alvarez turned pro, he always wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather, and so on and so forth. So when Keyshawn Davis said he wanted to see his boy beat Devin Haney, we didn't know who Keyshawn wanted to fight, who he was targeting. But now we do know. Now Keyshawn is calling out someone, and he's calling out one of the most dangerous contenders in the sport, and that's Frank Martin. And I believe Keyshawn is serious. I don't believe he's just clout chasing. I believe he's serious. He went so far as to saying we could fight on the Spence versus Crawford undercard. And surprisingly, Errol Spence didn't really like that idea too much. But more importantly, Frank Martin himself didn't even show that much interest in this fight. Frank Martin just basically told Davis to focus on the opponent that he has coming up next. And Errol Spence, he said he prefers Shakur Stevenson versus Frank Martin. And by the way, when Frank Martin said that Keyshawn should focus on his next opponent, if I'm not mistaken, his next opponent is going to be against Tago. That was the guy that Ryan Garcia had beat. Now, obviously, you're supposed to always be focused on your opponent. But if Keyshawn Davis was fighting against a Lomachenko, even a George Kambosos, a William Zepeda, Isaac Pitbull Cruz, then it would make more sense for a fighter to say to Keyshawn, you need to just focus on your next opponent. But in all reality, when it comes to Tago, you could definitely overlook him, just like Ryan Garcia was doing. So unfortunately, it sounds like we won't be seeing a Keyshawn Davis versus Frank Martin fight anytime soon. I think the fact that Keyshawn Davis is calling out fighters like Frank Martin, and I believe he's genuine, he's sincere when he did it, that means that he's going to be on a fast track in his career. That means he's really ready to step up in competition. And I believe if it's not going to be Frank Martin, it's going to be some other big name lightweights. I mean, now Top Rank, they don't have as many lightweights as PBC does, but I'm sure they can find a good lightweight for him to fight. Something else I wanted to talk about before I wrap this video up. Keyshawn Davis, he uses the nickname, the businessman. And let me tell you why that is the worst nickname to have in the sport of boxing. I'm sure Keyshawn is aware of this, but the word businessman is the word that ESPN, old media, It's a word that they use to usually discredit Floyd Mayweather. In fact, the only time they've ever referred to a boxer as a businessman is when it came to Floyd Mayweather. And we know that ESPN, they completely hate Floyd Mayweather's guts. They've never praised him for any of the wins that he got. They never even talked about how successful he was financially. When they say businessman, it just means they're basically saying he was a cherry picker. That's what they're trying to imply. He was a cherry picker. He took the fights at the right time. He never really took on any tough competition. When you say stuff like that, that sounds like Canelo Alvarez. Only time Canelo Alvarez is winning is when he's taking on very easy competition. It's only when he steps up in competition that he loses, something that Floyd Mayweather never did. Canelo Alvarez to this day would never fight a 23-year-old young Canelo Alvarez like the 36-year-old Floyd Mayweather did when he fought Canelo. You understand? Even Lomachenko, you have to give him more credit than like a Canelo, for example, because Loma is 34 years old and he's fighting a 23-year-old Devin Haney. A quote-unquote businessman per se in the sport of boxing would be someone who avoids all of the most dangerous competition and continues to patent their record to look like they're better than what they are. But once again, when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, to this day, how many fighters do you know have gotten in the ring with undefeated champions that were way younger than them, much bigger and stronger, and did it on a regular basis? This was Floyd Mayweather's whole career at the welterweight division, fighting against giants, basically. So once again, the word businessman is used to diss a black fighter. It's a way for them to blow a dog whistle. Bam Bam Rodriguez had an opportunity to take on the biggest fight of his career, and that's fight against either Francisco Estrada or even Chocolatito Gonzalez. But instead, Bam Bam decided to move down in weight and fight against champions we've never heard of, or fight for vacant belts against opponents that we have never heard of, that are not on the level of Estrada or Gonzalez. You have fighters that want to prove that they're the best in the world, pound for pound, and you have fighters that are making complete business moves, meaning they just want to stay winning because they feel if they take a loss right now, because losing is bad for business, it will mess up the money that they will make in the future. If you don't believe me, ask Jojo Diaz. Jojo, he took the risk of fighting Devin Haney. If Jojo was being a businessman, he could have completely avoided Devin Haney, kept pushing for a Ryan Garcia fight or pushing for another fight that would have guaranteed him a win. But now, ever since he lost to Devin Haney, his career is all but over now because he just suffered his third loss in a row this last weekend against Mercito Gesta. When Floyd Mayweather jumped in the ring with a 23-year-old Canelo Alvarez, who outweighed him by 15 pounds and was way younger than him, as old as Floyd Mayweather was, Floyd was taking a massive risk against that young lion. Let me tell you how serious the risk was. A lot of people don't even know this, but did you guys know the same Canelo Alvarez that Floyd Mayweather fought, Manny Pacquiao was offered the Canelo Alvarez fight twice, and he turned the fight down, and he was offered some serious money. And he was offered the fight when Canelo was around 23, and he was offered the fight when Canelo was older. He still turned down the fight. So the age excuse can't even be used. That's how dangerous Canelo Alvarez was. When Floyd Mayweather fought Canelo, that was basically Floyd's David Benavidez, because David Benavidez is around the same age that Canelo Alvarez was, 23, 24 years old. David Benavidez is 26 now, but he's been calling out Canelo Alvarez since he was like 24. Virgil Ortiz is a businessman. Jaime Munguia is a businessman. We already know Canelo is a businessman. But do you guys really think it's a coincidence that old media has never called any of these fighters good businessmen? Almost every time these fighters duck someone, you will always see someone in the comment section supporting them, saying, hey man, it's just business. It's got nothing to do with ducking, it's just business. Yeah, you're right, it is business. because losing is bad for business. Where do you guys think Canelo Alvarez would be right now if he fought both Charlo brothers and Demetrius Andrade when he was at 154? That is a rhetorical question, because even the biggest Canelo Alvarez fan deep down knows where Canelo Alvarez would be. He would have been in the exact same predicament that Oscar Valdez is in right now. The same situation that Jojo Diaz is in right now. And this is the reason why fighters once again like Vergil Ortiz and Jaime Munguia, they're trying to follow in Canelo Alvarez's footsteps. But those other Mexican fighters, they did not have the luxury of losing to Floyd Mayweather, which made Canelo Alvarez a star, as crazy as that sounds. Let the Canelo Alvarez fans tell it before the Canelo fight, Floyd Mayweather wasn't supposed to be anything special. All of a sudden, Canelo loses to him, and that's what makes Canelo so good. Because look at how good he did against Floyd Mayweather while losing every single round. Now, all of a sudden, these same fans are saying, well, yeah, he lost to Floyd Mayweather, but you can't really knock someone for losing to Floyd Mayweather. I mean, look at how good he is. But yet they never talked about how good or how great Floyd Mayweather was when he was beating everyone else. We know what time it is. So I can't understand, why would Keyshawn Davis want to give himself a nickname that's used to discredit black boxers? I mean, that's no different than calling yourself the defensive fighter. Keyshawn, the defensive fighter Davis. Because we all know having a good defense is only a bad thing when you're a black fighter doing it. Meanwhile, Canelo Alvarez fans are on the internet sharing clips of Canelo Alvarez avoiding like 2 or 3 punches from Danny Jacobs when they were fighting, to try to show people how great his defense is. Even in that fight, he didn't show the greatest defense, but the fact that they would have to go all the way back to the Danny Jacobs fight to start showing clips of his defense today tells you the whole story. So calling someone a defensive fighter, it's the same thing. It's another code word that they use when they're talking about black boxers. Somebody sent me a clip a while back. It was 2 Mexican fans. They were interviewing Shakur Stevenson. And the Mexican fans, they're dissing Shakur Stevenson as they interview him. They told Shakur Stevenson, they said, you and Devin Haney are defensive fighters. So if you guys fight against each other, who's going to punch first? Let me tell you guys, there's no doubt about it. These fans that interviewed Shakur Stevenson, they're not stupid. They're not that naive at all. That was once again a way to be able to diss Shakur Stevenson on their platform. They were blowing a dog whistle, and they knew that Shakur Stevenson wouldn't take offense to it at all. That's like interviewing 2 fighters that don't have the best defense. And you ask them, so which one of you guys are going to be blocking, since neither one of you guys are known for defense? Just like Julio Cesar Chavez, Margarito, Diego Corrales. They were always trying to block the punches. They just didn't have the reflexes, the technique, the rhythm and coordination to be able to avoid all of those punches. So when these fans were dissing Shakur Stevenson in this interview, Shakur could have easily came back and said, go back and watch my Oscar Valdez fight. And I want you to tell me how many times I was the one that initiated the exchanges. I was the first to punch. When Devin Haney fought Jojo Diaz, when Devin Haney fought George Kambosos the first time, you will hear the commentators say, Jojo Diaz is not letting his hands go enough. George Kambosos is not letting his hands go enough. It makes no sense to call someone a defensive fighter when the defensive fighter is landing more punches and often even throwing more punches than who you would say is the non-defensive fighter. And you notice whenever you hear old media say, Floyd or so-and-so or these are defensive fighters, notice they never talk about who the offensive fighters are. You know why they don't? Because usually it's the fighter that has the best defense that also has the best offense in that fight. Remember, having a good defense is based on the stats. How many punches you can avoid, right? The lowest percentage of opponents' landed punches, right? So how would you determine who has the best offense. You would also have to base it on the percentage, on the stats. So if two guys are fighting and one guy is landing 10% of his punches and the opponent or the other guy is landing over 50% of his punches, we know who the best offensive fighter is that night. We also know who the best defensive fighter is that night. It's the same guy. If you guys really pay attention to boxing, what you will notice is when someone who has a great defense is fighting against an offensive fighter, they usually nullify the offensive fighter's attack so much that it's the offensive fighter that becomes so defensive-minded in that fight, that he becomes the most defensive fighter in the ring that night. This is proven when you watch the Floyd Mayweather versus Manny Pacquiao fight. In that fight, Floyd Mayweather not only outlanded Pacquiao, but he threw more punches because Manny Pacquiao was so worried about the counter. There were times in that fight where Manny Pacquiao, he had Floyd on the ropes. He had him completely on the ropes. He threw a couple punches, but then he backed up. He let him off the ropes. And for a very aggressive fighter, that's the best position to have your opponent in, with his back against the ropes. You remember Joe Frazier. Aggressive fighters like that, they love to pin you to the ropes and let their hands go. But Manny Pacquiao decided to stop punching and back up to let Floyd off the ropes because he was so worried about the incoming. He was so worried about running into punches. So saying he's boring, saying he's the greatest defensive fighter of all time, he's a great businessman. These are all code words for what they really want to call black boxers. And really has nothing to do with offense or defense because the statistics prove that. So while we know what time it is, apparently and unfortunately, a lot of these black boxers today, they don't know what time it is. And hopefully, Keyshawn Davis, he figures it out soon. I want to leave you guys with this clip I want you to listen to. Something that Lou DiBella said immediately following Devin Haney's second win over George Kambosos. Check it out.
If I wasn't on the pound for pound list before, I definitely should be now.
Period. Yes.
You know, when we watch fights sometimes, and used to watch Mayweather, and he would just sort of quietly destroy guys and just beat their spirit and win almost every round, and people would go, "Oh, that's boring," right? But here's the reality too. You saw this tonight. When you open up against a guy like this, when you open up against a guy like Floyd, who was one of the best ever, when you open up against a Shakur Stevenson that's a similar kind of, almost perfect boxer, you open yourself up to get beaten up. And there's a reason why some of the fights are winning, because the other guy doesn't want to open up to what he can do to them. And tonight, George came there knowing he had to earn his fan base back. He had to entertain the people of Australia. And he knew probably that he was walking into a tornado. And he did it anyway, which is credit to him. But then you also saw what happened when he had a guy that was coming right at him and willing to throw caution to the wind. He hurt him pretty badly and beat him up. And that's the greatness of a guy like this and the greatness of a Floyd Mayweather. And you notice I'm using them in the same breath, and that's not accidental.
Preach!
One of the most anticipated dog breedings has finally been confirmed. The pups from this pairing of Zeta and DMX will be born very soon. We are now accepting deposits. Our pups will come with ears cropped and a 2-year health guarantee. Get ahead of the pack on purchasing a puppy by contacting NWA Cane Corsos on Instagram at NWA Cane Corsos. Call or text 479-326-1603 with any questions. A guard dog is your first line of defense. These will be the right pups for the job.
All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, Visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com.